Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. My name is Christy Angel. I am the co-president for the Citywide Council for District 75, and in this capacity, I am here as a parent and also a community chair for this committee. Today, we are in week 3 of our parent session. We do have interpreters here, so before I move any further, I would like to give the floor to our interpreters. We have Bangla, Spanish, and Mandarin. Mandarin, you have the floor to give your instructions.
大家好，如果家长需要普通话的翻译的话，请您打这个电话347-966-4114，然后按密码543-112-360，然后井号。再一次，电话号码是347-966-4114，然后密码是543-112-360，井号，谢谢。Thank you. Instruction given.
Awesome, Miss School Stuff.
Alrighty, parent members, if you do not have yourself muted, please do make sure to mute yourself as we walk through these instructions. Spanish interpreter, you now have the floor to give your instructions.
Buenas noches. En esta reunión tendremos interpretación simultánea. Solo debe de marcar desde su teléfono el 347-966-4114. Luego le pedirá el número de identificación de la reunión. Introduzca 710-644-820, seguido de la tecla de número. De nuevo, el teléfono a marcar desde es el número 347-966-4114. Seguido de 710-644-820, tecla de número. Estaremos periódicamente colocando las instrucciones también en el chat. Gracias. End of Spanish announcement.
Thank you so much. Bangla, you now have the floor to provide your instructions.
থ্যাংক ইউ। শুভ সন্ধ্যা সবাইকে। আপনারা যদি এই অনুষ্ঠান বাংলায় শুনতে চান, আপনারা ডায়াল করতে পারেন 347-966-4114। তারপরে আপনারা একটা আইডি নাম্বার দিবেন, ওটা হলো 237-810-131। হ্যাশট্যাগ নাম্বারটা আবার হলো 347-966-4114। আইডি নাম্বারটা হলো 237-810-131। হ্যাশট্যাগ। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Alrighty, welcome back, guys. If you're not coming back for the third time or the second time, and this is your first time, welcome here. Period. We are a family support group where we are working for caregivers and advocates to make sure you have the resources that you need. For this particular workshop, we are partnered with Family Kind, and Robin Ann McConaughey will be our presenter. She is the director of parenting education for Family Kind. She's a New York State educating certified parent educator. She's a parent, infant, and mental health educator specialist and a national certified counselor. She works with parents and caregivers who are overwhelmed, those who are separated or divorcing, and those who basically just need support in their spaces as we move through our journeys and lives. Robin is a magnificent resource, and we're very happy for her to be with us on this third week, where we will now be talking about meditation and de-escalation strategies to use in times of conflict. And with that, Robin, I will hand the floor over to you so that you may begin your presentation. And thank you again for being with us once again.
Thank you for having me, Christy. I appreciate being here. Well, welcome, everybody. I hope everyone is feeling calm and connected at this point. So tonight is exactly what Christy had mentioned. We're going to talk about how to calm our bodies, de-escalate our bodies in times of conflict with anybody, but in particularly with our children, because we know there's a lot of heated moments, and then use meditation to help us move forward with that. So first, understanding conflict and emotional triggers. How do our emotions get conflicted, get triggered, get activated when we're in conflict with anybody? So I always ask adults, what's your biggest challenge in staying calm during conflict? So that's something to think about. It's really important that we understand what activates us. What is that challenge? What is that roadblock that helps us, that prevents us from being calm? So identifying your personal activators or triggers, understanding what bothers you the most. Is it something that somebody said? Is it your child not following through with the direction that you asked them to do? Is it just maybe in the moment you're stressed and nothing seems like it's easy to get done? So understanding your own triggers or activators is very, very important. Recognizing your child. What activates your child? What triggers your child in those moments? Is it when they're stressed and they don't want to go to school? They want to be close to you. So maybe they misbehave. Maybe they're not as cooperative. Is it when they're tired, hungry, not feeling well? Or is it simply because they just don't want to do what you're asking? But understanding what pushes your child's buttons as well as your own. And understanding how the brain and conflict respond. So when our brain feels like we're in conflict, right away, our brain feels like we're in survival mode. So does your children's. So right away, our brain is saying, are we going to fight? Are we going to flight, free, run away? Or are we going to freeze up? What are we going to do? How are we reacting to this conflict? So understanding the connection between your emotions and conflict is extremely important. So my emotional triggers journal is a way that you can keep some logs. Again, sometimes this is really difficult for guardians to do. So if you can't write it down, and I give you a little idea of what that might look like at the bottom there, but sometimes just keeping in your mind is enough. So the first thing we talk about, as we just said, identifying your own triggers. So what situations trigger strong emotions for you? What really gets to you where you feel your whole body getting hot, tense muscles, frustrated, feelings of maybe aggression, anger? So some examples: when my child doesn't listen to me, when my child doesn't follow directions, when I feel overwhelmed at work, overwhelmed with traveling from work to home. What are those? So identifying maybe one or two and working on those is very, very important because it calms the nervous system. So what we know, knowledge is power. So the more we know about ourselves, the easier it is in conflict. So the second step, what are your physical reactions? How does your body react to those conflicts, those stressors? So example, your heart might race, you might feel heat, your body gets very hot, you might get a headache, a stomach ache, your muscles feel really tense. So again, understanding that this is what bothers me, my child's not listening. And when my child doesn't listen, my body is telling me my chest is tight. My body's telling me my tense, and I'm very tense in the muscles. So I'm aggravated, I'm frustrated. So if you tie those together, you know what you're dealing with. That's the awareness part. Step 3, the thought patterns. So we always have an experience, which is our child not listening. And then we have some type of reaction, physiological body reacts, which is maybe tightness in the chest. And there's a thought pattern there. So what thoughts go through your mind when your child is not listening? So some guardians have told me, why doesn't anyone respect me? Why doesn't my child listen to me? I can't handle this situation. I've asked my child 5 or 6 times to put their shoes away and they're not listening. So that's the thought that kind of heightens us. We're going to learn tonight how to maybe change that thought. We call it reframing. And instead of getting negative thoughts, we're going to have positive thoughts and looking at the root cause instead of escalating the situation. We're going to learn to de-escalate. So the third step, what is your behavioral response? So how do you typically react with all of this going on? So the idea is your child's not listening. Then you have this bodily tightness in your chest because your child's not listening and you're getting aggravated. And then the next thing you know, you're acting. There's something that you're doing, some behavior. Typically it's we yell. Sometimes we withdraw our affection from our children. We connect and then disconnect pretty quickly. What is it that you do? Do you throw things? Do you get very angry? Do you say things that you don't mean? Understanding what your behavior is very important because typically our behaviors in conflict make the conflict escalate. And that's exactly what we don't want to do with our children. Step 5, coping strategies. So you know what triggered your behavior. You know the feelings in your body. You know the thought process that you feel disrespected. You feel frustrated with your child. And then the behavior is I yell and I scream and I carry on. Now, how are you going to cope with that? What are healthy coping strategies? So instead of yelling and screaming, what could you do? So the last few weeks, we've been talking about Mindful breathing, we've gone over breathing techniques, we've gone over grounding techniques. Tonight, we're going to go over a whole nother bunch of techniques to calm ourselves with de-escalation. But the best thing to do is to pause, practice deep breathing, take a walk. And again, what would work for you? Everything is different for everybody. So for me, it would be taking a pause, collecting myself, calming my nervous system, maybe going for a walk, having ice water, maybe ice pack on my back or my neck. Everyone is different, but it's important that you know how you can de-escalate yourself, what strategies work for you. And again, all of this could be used for your children. So understanding that emotional trigger and and when you're in conflict. So there's different parts of our brain. So our amygdala is that fight, flight, or freeze. The amygdala is a part of our brain that tells us if we're in threat. So when we're in conflict, whether it's with our children or another adult, possibly whomever it might be, our brains feel threatened. And it needs to understand right away, are we going to react to this threat with a fight? Are we going to get aggressive, assertive? Are we going to run away? Are we going to avoid the situation? What are we to do? Is this something that is really a threat? And in conflict, our bodies just think it's a threat, because our heart rate goes up. We get sweaty. There's a tightness in our chest. The prefrontal cortex, which is right here in the front part of your brain, that's the rational part of our brain. Our children don't have that part of the brain developed fully. So it's our job to look at the situation and not be impulsive. It's our job to say, okay, this is not a threat. My child and I are not getting along. We need to take a minute. We need to de-escalate and figure out how to communicate calmly. This part of our brain is very, very important. However, that part of the brain goes offline. So think of it as a computer almost shutting down and stop working. It goes off. It does not work. When we're heightened, it's really difficult, even for us as adults, to sit there and think of a calm, relaxed way of approaching the conflict with our child. So this is why practicing this when we're not escalated is very, very important. So the hippocampus is another part of our brain that actually helps us emotionally regulate. So it regulates those frustrated, angry moments that we're in conflict, when we're getting really heated. It will help us calm those moments down. But the only way that that really works is if we practice it, and practice it when we're not heated. So combining all of these things, recognizing your emotional triggers, understanding how quickly your brain reacts to moments of conflict because it feels threatened, is equally as important. That's how it happened with your child. So a lot of times our children will react in a way that we're not happy about when we're in conflict, but that's their brain telling them that there's a threat, even with you, someone who loves them very much. So that threat for the child's brain can't say, well, that's a safe person. That's my parent. That's my guardian. The brain is just saying, someone's upset with you. You did something wrong. Something's not right. Get out. Do something about this. Save yourself. So as guardians, as adults, if we can recognize that we have this activator, this trigger in our brain, and our children do, it helps us understand how to calm the situation, to de-escalate. So teach emotional regulation. One of the best ways is to teach your children how to regulate their emotions, to have the emotions, but to have them in a way that everyone feels safe. That's the biggest thing, because our brains don't feel safe when we're in conflict. Even if we're arguing with our children, the brain is saying this is not a safe environment. This is not a safe situation. Another way, model healthy conflict resolution. So instead of screaming and yelling, we take a moment and we pause. We calm down. Everyone regulates their nervous system. And this is the exact language that you would use with your children so they understand their bodies. We all have nervous system. It's really important for children to understand that we could take a pause. We need to calm our nervous systems down first before we talk about how we resolve this conflict. How do we communicate in a calm manner with one another? So again, going back to the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex and all of these, the adults are triggered very similar to the children. So we can, even when we walk through it, talk to the child and say, you know what, when you raise your voice and you don't follow the directions that I've asked you to follow, it makes me feel very angry. So my brain is telling me that there is a situation here that there's something to worry about. And when I get worried, it's very difficult for me to calm down. So when we walk our children through that process, it's helping us remember that we're human and we do have blow-ups. It's also helping us remember that there is a way for us to calm down. And it's especially teaching our children how to regulate and understand our bodies. So a lot of times what happens when our brain, all these parts that you see up here on the slide, are working against each other because they're really just trying to protect us. So if we're aware of what upsets us, if we're aware of what our body signs, those signals that our bodies are giving us, we can infiltrate that first. We can calm ourselves down before we escalate the situation. So we're going to talk about some de-escalation. So this is the same thing for the children. Again, walking them through their body, understanding what their body can do for them, how the body can help us, and how the body, yes, is protecting us, but it doesn't always help us. So a child in conflict with a parent might get very defensive, might maybe yell at the parent because they're scared or they're frustrated or confused. A lot of children's brains, when they're in these conflict situations, are telling them that the parent doesn't understand. My guardian isn't getting what I'm saying, so now there's a threat. And we know that that's not true, but the brain is so young and so underdeveloped that it does not understand. So that's our job as the adults to explain it. So here are some ways of de-escalating strategies to diffuse tension with your children. Actually, these work with anybody. Some of these we've gone over if you were with us for the past 2 weeks. So any type of deep breathing. So for instance, box breathing, which we did last week. You breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4. And you do this for 4 counts, maybe up to 5 times. And what that does is it regulates the nervous system and brings the nervous system down from a heightened state to a calm state where we can have a conversation instead of conflict. Grounding exercises is another great way. And I always tell adults, please do these with your children because everyone's escalated. So if everyone does it together, it really helps. So one of the grounding exercises we discussed was the 5-3-2-1 method. So you look for 5 things you can see in the environment, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that kind of brings everybody down. It also is causing a connection because as we know, conflicts causes us to be disconnected from the person, in particular our children, because we're their safe people. And when they're in conflict with us, they're not feeling safe. So their behaviors are going to react in survival mode. So these grounding techniques, all these de-escalation strategies keep us connected to our children. Visualization. So we had mentioned this last time and talking about thinking about a happy place, whether it's the beach or a playground for a child or their bedroom or family vacation. What can you close your eyes and envision together that works, that calms you down? Progressive relaxation is, again, when we're in conflict, our body is very, very tense. So what we do in progressive muscle relaxation is we squeeze our body parts really tight. So if I squeeze my shoulders really tight for a count of 5, and then I release it for a count of 5. You do that 1 or 2 times, it starts to regulate the nervous system for you without you even thinking about it. Positive self-talk. Unfortunately, most of us have this negative script, especially the adults, because of so much childhood trauma or challenges that we've had. So we have very negative talk. And the more negative talk we have during conflict, the higher the conflict. So there's tons of research that's showing us that when we're in conflict with our children in particular, if we can be positive, that we are strong, I can do this, I can calm myself down, it could be a good role model for my child and communicate and connect, that's much healthier than saying, oh, my child doesn't like me, I can't do this right, this is very overwhelming. Because again, our brains are going to listen to what we're saying and follow suit. Is this a threat or is this not a threat? Taking a break, that's that pause, that's saying to your child, I love you so much. Right now, I'm very, very angry and I need to calm my nervous system down. So I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to go put some cold water on my face. I'm going to go outside for a walk, whatever it might be for you. Again, role modeling how important it is to de-escalate first. Mindfulness meditation, again, just thinking about the moment, thinking about how your body's feeling, talking your body through relaxation, understanding how you calm yourself down. Physical activity always helps get that extra energy out, especially in conflict. So I always tell families, if you're arguing with your children, just take a pause from the argument and dance it out. Dance it out, yell it out, scream it out, move around the house, jumping jacks, whatever you want to do. And again, brings the nervous system down to a better calm level. And now we can communicate and connect in a healthier way and resolve whatever the conflict might be. Connect with the support system. This group is incredible. You have all this, you have each other. Always connect with people, make sure people are supportive and look for those people. Creating this personal de-escalation plan is really important for all of you, because if we have this when we're calm, then when we're escalated, our bodies will remember it. Again, everything takes practice. It does take some time to formulate it, but it is worth it in the end. So a quick idea of what the plan would look like, again, identifying those triggers, what activates you in situations, what gets you going, what causes a discussion to jump into a conversation. You need to know your own, you need to know your child, because then you can work together on this plan. Choose technique that work. What works for you? Maybe, putting ice pack on the back of my neck, taking a walk works for me, might not work for you. They have to find something. I always tell adults, find 5 things that work for you, because they don't always work at all at the same time. Sometimes something works one day, the next day it doesn't work so great. So again, find 5 things so you have backup plans. Practice them regularly, especially when you're not heightened, because that's the way you actually teach the nervous system how to de-escalate in times of escalation. So when we practice this when we're calm, our nervous system just feels like this is what we do all the time. So when we're escalated, the nervous system automatically, with enough practice, will de-escalate itself. Our bodies are really a wonderful thing. And when needed, obviously apply these techniques whenever you're feeling emotionally escalated. So it always tells guardians to, start when you're calm, start when you don't feel escalated. And then if you get a little annoyed, so say, you tried to make breakfast and there was no milk. You had no milk or eggs to make the breakfast. A little frustrating, didn't have that planned. Practice these then, because you're not as escalated. So when you're on a 1 or a 2, practice them. And then practice it a little bit more in 2 or 3. So as you get escalated, when you're at a 10 during a conflict, you're more used to understanding these emotions and these triggers, and then you can use these de-escalation plan. So some phrases to help you when you're grounding and calming yourself at first. I need a moment to take a deep breath before we talk. These are things you say to yourself. These are things you say to your children or anyone you're in conflict with, because number one, you're advocating for yourself and you're teaching your children, very important skill, to advocate for what they need in the moment. So saying, I need a moment to take a deep breath before we talk, shows respect for the other person, shows respect for yourself, and it also de-escalates your nervous system. It gives you time to use the techniques that we're talking about. I hear you. Let me take a second to think about it. Again, just saying in a nice way, I need a pause. I need to take a break from this conflict. I need to take a break from this conversation. I need to gather myself so I can present to you in the best way possible. I want to help. Let's slow down and breathe together. Or let's slow down and look for 5 colors in the environment. Let's slow down and take a nice cold ice glass of water, something along those lines. So again, connecting and understanding that we need to calm ourselves down before we continue. Reducing tension through connection, some wonderful ways, and this works really, really well. I love you and I want to help. So your children know that, yes, they're angry, you're frustrated with their behavior, but you love them. Love them so much and you want to help them, but we need to take a moment. We need to take a pause. Again, your affect with all of these statements is very, very important. It has to be genuine. It has to be calm. It has to be relaxing. Another statement, we're on the same team. Let's figure this out together, because conflict always causes one side versus the other. And children, no matter how much they love us and no matter how much they know we love them, they're always going to feel they're against you when they're in conflict. So we always want to present with that united front. We want to present that we're connected. I could be really angry with your behavior, but I love you and we're a team and we're going to figure this out together. Very, very important. The other thing that's super important, to tell yourself you're safe in this conflict, tell your children you're safe. We are upset with each other. Yes, our voices were raised, but we are safe. You are safe. Once someone feels that they are safe and that you're there for them, they calm down and then there's more of a connection. Repairing after conflict. So we always talk about conflict causes rupture. And unfortunately, in any relationship, there are always ruptures. We try to have as less as possible, especially with our children, but they are there. So when there is a rupture, it is super, super important to have that repair. That repair is what connects the children together with you. It was what calms their nervous system. It's what lets them know that we can have mishaps. Things can go awry, but we're still going to come together and we're still going to love each other no matter what. So some statements after ruptures, when we're trying to repair a conflict with our children. I'm sorry for raising my voice. I want to do better. Again, that we always need to take accountability for our behaviors with our children, especially if they're scary, especially if we blindside our children with some of our behaviors. And we want to let them know that we're going to work on that we take accountability and that we're going to work on that. Teaches them to do the same in relationships as well. Let's talk about what happened when we're both calm. So again, it tells them that it tells your children, we both need to calm down before we can have this conversation. Because the difference between conflict in this way and conversation is that we're heightened in conflict. Most of the time, that's what conflict looks like with families, unfortunately. But when we're having a conversation, we're calm. We're listening to each other. There's reciprocity. There's respect for one another. Another statement, I appreciate you sharing how you feel with me. We always want our children to feel comfortable telling us anything. A lot of times guardians feel like a child telling them that they feel angry with us or they don't like us is very personal and it hurts a lot. Absolutely. But it's just the child's way of explaining that I'm angry and I'm frustrated because you hurt me and you scared me. So if we look behind what the child's saying and really understand what the meaning is, it's not something that is an attack on us. It's just the child's way in that moment communicating that something went wrong and they're scared and they are really, they're confused majority of the time. And we have to let them know that we need them to share with us so we could help them figure out the conflict. So here's this little chart, which is a really just quick chart helping you understand prevention, the stages of de-escalation strategies. So obviously we go on prevention. So that's again, going back to triggers, understanding yours and your child's, teaching coping skills all the time, not just in conflict. And what that does is it helps children understand what stresses them out, what bothers them, what can they do to calm their body down, to calm their mind down. The triggers we talked about. So then if you jump to agitation, what agitates you and how do we stay calm in those moments when we're agitated? It's really important to talk in the calm voice, to offer quiet places for yourself and for your children. When we're escalated, nonverbal cues are really important. So when you're feeling really super angry, definitely avoid power struggles because it becomes coercive, and coercive is power, and it's not love and it's not connection. It's just telling the children that I'm stronger and better than you, and then what you say is not important, and that just causes the conflict to escalate. The nonverbal cues is a soft face, maybe a really deep breath to calm yourself down and calm your child down. Maybe a warm hug or a high five if that's more appropriate for your client, or just sitting next to your child. Believe it or not, when your child is calm, you become calm. We play off one another. So if we can both calm down together, that's very helpful. When in crisis, and we all are in crisis more often than not, unfortunately, ensure that you feel safe, ensure that your child feels safe, and then use those techniques of de-escalation to help you in those moments to calm the situation. You really feel like you cannot calm the situation, that's why that support people are really important. Someone you can call. Hopefully they're there. If they're not there, you can call somebody on the phone and they can help de-escalate you and the situation with your child. Remove obviously any dangerous objects because a lot of times our conflicts do escalate. Maybe a child will throw something. Maybe we throw something because we're so angry. We're not really knowing what's going on. We want to make sure everyone's in a calm environment, a safe environment. And that recovery is that repair that we talked about. Helping the child gain control over their emotions, regulate their emotions. You do the same. So again, lead by example. And when they're seeing us do this, they will start to do this. And then we'll encourage them to do this with friends and family members and other people in their lives. So meditation for emotional regulation is one of the most wonderful things that we can do. A little bit of science behind that so you understand what it actually does for you, so you know there is value in it. It activates the body's relaxation response. So when we meditate, and meditation looks different for everybody. Some people really would like to be in a quiet setting with some quiet noise, sounds, and they meditate that way. Some people consider crocheting meditating, painting meditating, reading. So again, whatever you feel that is for you, it is different. The whole idea is it's calming down the cortisol, and it's escalating all the endorphins and dopamine and all the chemicals that keep us calmer. That cortisol is a stress hormone. In crisis situations, it's important to save somebody, but when we're in conflict, it comes up all the time, the cortisol. And as we had talked about a few times in this series, cortisol is poisonous to our body, and it keeps us escalated, and it doesn't keep us connected with our children. So this involves a shift in the nervous system, leading to reduced heart rate, blood pressure comes down, and muscle tension, you start to relax. So you'll feel the difference right away the minute you start to do any form of meditation. Typically, guardians use the breath meditation because in the moment, that's just the easiest one to use. Meditation helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes resting, calm well-being, and that's the connection. That's when you're able to connect with your children or anybody else. By calming the nervous system, meditation helps improve emotional regulation, so you're better able to regulate those high intense emotions like anger, frustration, agitation, or rage. So the more you meditate, the more those emotions will come down. You'll still feel them, they will not be as frequent, and they will not be as intense. And then there'll be less conflict, and then there'll be more connection and conversation, which is exactly what we're looking for. Regular meditation can improve our attention throughout the day, our focus, the way we function on a cognitive level, the way we interact with others. Again, all of this is wonderful for our children as well. Regular meditation practice can include also changes your gene expression, believe it or not. So we have genes in us that we all know, and genes are activated by experiences. So if we're having a lot of high conflicts, a lot of high altitudes of escalation and arguments, then what those genes are going to be changed into aggression, rage, anxiety, probably depression. But on the other hand, if we use more meditation, more de-escalation techniques, more mindfulness, more calming and breathing, we change the gene for future generations into a way of calming, and it's more relaxed, and we're much more able to integrate our lives with other people. So mindfulness meditation, the basic focus here, and this is something that you could use throughout your day, and we'll talk about that as well, what that would look like. It's really just concentrating on being in the present moment without judgment. So a lot of people think that mindfulness has to do with just clearing your mind. That's not at all what it has to do. It's being in the moment and saying, okay, so my child is frustrating me. What am I going to do about calming myself down and recognizing how my child is frustrating me? It's paying attention to how you're breathing. Are you breathing too quickly? Are you breathing too slowly? How do you regulate your breathing? What is your body feeling? And what's going through your mind? Are there negative thoughts that are escalating the conflict? And that's what it's all about. It's kind of just singling into yourself and being attuned to yourself. To find a quiet place would be great. We can't always do that. But the idea is just to close your eyes if possible, take these deep breaths, feel your body, go through your body with a body scan and understand what you're feeling and let loose, regulate yourself in some way and understand what your body's telling you. If your mind starts to wander, gently bring it back to your breath, because what we're doing now is we're teaching our body to, in times of conflict, to not necessarily focus on the conflict, which raises our blood pressure, which causes us to be more tense. We're talking about calming ourselves down in the moment. So understanding that, okay, so I'm feeling tense, but because I do mindful breathing, mindful meditation, then I'm able to calm myself down in those moments. If you practice this even for a few moments a day, a minute or two, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to get that into a busy day, that will actually start to lower your blood pressure. It will start to lower all of the chemicals in your body of cortisol and start to help you fashion and in a healthier way throughout the day. So one way to do this, besides the breathing part, is the body scan, which I had mentioned. So this is where you can close your eyes. I always suggest maybe do this just before you go to bed. It's a great release before you go to sleep. Hopefully have a deeper sleep, a healthier sleep. You start with your head or you go all the way down to your toes. You could do the vice versa, whichever makes sense for you. And you just do some quiet, deep breathing and focusing on each part of your body. Do you feel tension in your head? Do you have a headache? Do you feel tension in your neck, in your shoulders? And as you're recognizing the tension, believe it or not, what the brain is doing now is also releasing some of the tension because you're being aware of it. So if you go through this whole body, you can also say, well, where do I hold the tension when I have conflict? Some people hold it in their hips, in their back, in their neck. And then you can work on those parts to release them with some tightness and control the tightness. So if it's in your neck, you squeeze your neck and then you release it. And you do that a few times, and that body scan helps you organize yourself in a healthier way. Loving kindness meditation. This is to cultivate feelings of compassion and love towards yourself, which a lot of guardians don't do. We don't feel we have the time, or we don't feel we're supposed to be doing that. Here, hopefully you could sit comfortably or lie down, whatever works for you. Take a few deep breaths to center yourself. Again, any type of breathing that's calmer will be much better for you. And silently use phrases that make sense to you. So I give you an example. May I be happy? May I be healthy? May I be safe? May I live with ease? And if you say that 5, 6, 7 times, maybe the first few times you don't believe it, but the idea of something like this is to give gratitude to yourself, to love yourself, and to have that self-love is very important because it keeps us calm in conflict. And it knows that we have the power to create a wonderful, calm environment for our children. So if you say a phrase like this over and over, your brain starts to believe it. It becomes a positive self-talk script for you. Then after a few minutes, you can extend the wishes to may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you be at ease. And you keep extending it to other people. So you might want to add your children into there, your significant other, some family or friends. And what it's doing is it's oxytocin. It's creating this connection. Oxytocin is the chemical that connects us to other people. And it also right away, just like that, snap of a finger, will calm the nervous system down. So again, that kindness to yourself and that grace you can give yourself. This one is something that you could really just sit there and do on the subway with your eyes open. But you could sit there and do this. You could do this while you're brushing your teeth, just saying it over and over in your mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be one time of the day. I do suggest doing this more often so it becomes more genuine to you. Morning mindfulness, start your day with a 5-minute, if possible, maybe a minute, if whatever you have. Hopefully you can get in some type of comfortable position, and you could do any type of breathing in this and just think about what is your day going to look like. Can you help set a calm and focused tone for your day? So you close your eyes, you think about all the wonderful things you can do in the day, have grace for yourself, and you can start your day that way. A lot of guardians that I work with use this while they're making breakfast, while they're getting dressed. Yes, they're doing something. It's not necessarily a calm, relaxed situation, but it's the only time they can get it in. And they do notice that they feel like, okay, I'm going to be calm today. I'm going to relax. I'm going to take deep breaths. It sets their day off in a really wonderful way. And it kind of jumpstarts the nervous system and calm. Walking meditation. I know a lot of us don't really have time for this, but it does really work very, very well because when you're in nature, just the fresh air outside, just being outside in nature, hearing nature, feeling nature, being one with nature actually calms the nervous system on its own. But the walking also helps. And as you're walking, think about yourself. Think about how wonderful you are, the grace that you could give yourself, some gratitude for your children, gratitude for the life that you have. This is tough sometimes. But taking that stroll with just yourself and understanding and being one with yourself, you can kind of react on some things that are going on in your life a little bit better. And then it does also lower your blood pressure and your nervous system levels, which will help in conflict. Mindful eating. A lot of times guardians don't eat or we're always eating on the run. But if you can take a few moments to notice just the texture of the food, the color of the food, the smell of the food, all of these mindfulness, all of these meditations are just bringing you into the present moment. And it's helping you recognize and be aware of how your body is feeling. So if you are calm in these moments, which hopefully these would produce that calm for your nervous system, when you're in escalated situations, conflict situations, you have like a alarm going off. Well, wait a minute. This isn't where we want to be. We're used to being calm. We need our nervous system to come down. So it gives you almost like a red flag because you've been practicing things. And if you're eating, even if you're eating really quickly on the go, just notice some type of characteristic of the food that you're eating, and also will help you be mindful. But it also causes not just the mindfulness in your nervous system, but it also helps your digestive system. So those less stomach problems, less digestive problems. Bedtime meditation before going to sleep. Hopefully, if we all have rough days. So you could practice relaxation meditation. You're lying down just before you close, your eyes to go to sleep. You just close your eyes and can take some deep breath. Do that body scan that we had talked about, and maybe do some tightness of the muscles and release some tension. Really deep breaths, holding it in, count to 5, hold it for 5, and let it out for 5. Those will kind of calm the nervous system and prepare it for a restful night's sleep. A lot of times we go to sleep with the phone in our hands or some type of technology on, which is one of the worst things we can do because all that does is heightens our nervous system. So in order to calm our nervous system, we have to have none of that. So some people like to have some type of ambient light or noise in the background, absolutely fine. But in these moments, it's so much better to be in peace with yourself and understand your nervous system because it does calm yourself. And it does help you sleep much, much better. And then you wake up more refreshed and ready for the day the next day. mindful listening. Practice mindful listening during conversations. This is really hard in conflict. So if we're practicing them outside of conflict, when we're in conflict, it actually comes more naturally. So give your full attention to the speaker, whoever that might be. Eye contact if it's appropriate, because that's not always appropriate. Some people aren't comfortable with that, and avoid interrupting. What this does, it's tuning you into people's body language, their facial expressions. What are they telling you? What is the tone of voice telling you? So you're more readily to see those red alerts with your children in particular, or any other people before conflict hits. So you're seeing people in a calm manner, you're respecting them, and then you're understanding what their conflict would be. If their face changes, if their body language changes, their tone of voice changes. So what it does is it helps you mindfully listen, and it also helps you attune to other people, so you're better ready to pick up on those red flags that a conflict is coming, a disagreement is coming, a rupture is coming. So now you know, wait, I have to pause, I have to read the situation, I have to calm myself, and then approach the situation in a calm manner before conflict arises. Gratitude meditation. This one's really hard for some families, from parents, because they don't have gratitude for themselves. So I hope you all can practice this until you do believe it. If you take a few minutes each morning, each afternoon, I do suggest you do this more than once a day, so you really do start to feel it and start to believe it. You want to say phrases, something like, I am grateful for my family. I am grateful and thankful for my health. I'm grateful for the parent that I am. I'm grateful for trying to be the parent that I want to become. I'm grateful for the support group, whatever it might be. But thinking about things that you're grateful for that are outside of you is really important. But I always like parents to go, and guardians to go for themselves. What's important about you? You are wonderful. There's something about you. So when you start to believe that and you start to say it over and over, it definitely helps in time of conflict, when we feel like, oh, I'm like the worst parent. My kid's screaming at me, nothing's going right, and I'm yelling and screaming, because we all have those moments. So again, giving ourselves those grace, these moments help us. It helps us appreciate what we do have. Mindful stretching. What we know about the body, it's really important for the body to stretch and to move. We have this extra energy from conflict, or the possibility of conflict, the anticipation of it. So when we move our bodies and we stretch, if we're sitting too long, or we are standing too long, if you move your bodies in any way that stretches your arms, your legs, your necks, the joints, the muscles, it actually relieves some tension in the body and calms your nervous system. So again, in conflict, everything is tight. So if you can even just stretch your arms, if you put your arms up, if you twist your body, if you bend backwards and stretch your back a little bit, whatever you can do in those moments to loosen your body, it will bring the conflict down in your nervous system, which will also bring the conflict down with the person who you're having the argument with. Mindful moments, I call these glimmers. You look for these throughout the day, but there's other ways you can do it. So if you're thinking about, if you have a few seconds during every day, you could do this while you're washing your hands, brushing your teeth, grabbing a cup of tea or coffee. Focus on the sensations of what you're smelling, what you're hearing, what you're tasting, what's really going on. Because the more present you are in the moment, the more able you are to control your behavior, right? And which means you're controlling your emotions. So these mindful moments teach us to stay in the moment, because in conflict, we're not always in the moment. And that's really the biggest problem. That's why mind meditation is so important, because it keeps us in the moment and it keeps us regulated. So these glimmers, you can extend it to maybe you're going to the bus and to go to work, and you see this, this beautiful rainbow or something like that. So you're looking for those moments to keep you in the present time, instead of taking you out into stressful moments that may have happened or will happen in the future. Guided imagery. This is where you visualize a peaceful scene, or some place that makes you feel happy. This is the imagery we talked about, looking for maybe a lake, a mountain, a forest, the beach, whatever that might look like for you. It's different for everybody. But when you do this, you want to really encapsulate yourself in it. It takes you into a place where you hear, maybe if you're on a mountain, you hear the birds, you smell the flowers, you smell the pine trees, or something along those lines. You want to be able to feel it. If you're in the mountains and there's snow, you feel cold. You want your body to feel that, because what this does is it regulates your body. So when you're heightened and this place makes you feel happy, as I had said before, it brings you down. So you could take that pause when you're in conflict and go to your happy place, wherever you want to go, this visualization, And then you can walk yourself through the 5 senses. Okay, what would you see there? What would you feel there? What would you taste, smell? And then it brings your nervous system down. So then you can go back into the conflict in a calmer way and resolve whatever the conflict was about. We have mantra meditation, which is something we just talked about. It's a little slightly different, is where you kind of just say 1 or 2 words. And you can say something along the lines of peace, calm, just words that will symbolize something to calm your nervous system. And it's different for everybody. Maybe it's title of a song, maybe it's a flower, maybe it's a food, whatever that might be for you. It's just silently repeating the mantra to yourself. Now, some people use these quick phrases because they find it easier. You can also make a statement. Some people just like sound. So it might be maybe a playlist that you have, you could just put on. And again, all of this is about calming the nervous system. So when we are in conflict, which we will be, it won't be as intense and it won't be as frequent, because we've already learned through our meditation and our practices that we can be calm more often and be present to make ourselves calm if necessary. So conflict resolution. Obviously, when we're in conflict, it's really hard to go through these. So this is something to think about when you're not in conflict with anybody, especially your children. The best thing to offer is to really have a plan together as a family. If you could sit down and establish some family guidelines, that would be really helpful. So now we understand when we're in conflict, because we will disagree. What are some guidelines that will keep it feeling connected instead of disconnected? So respect. Everyone gets their chance to talk. We don't talk over one another. We don't belittle one another. We make each other feel safe in that environment. So what you're saying to me, I might not like, I might be hurt by it, but I'm not going to say something back to you to hurt you, which a lot of times happens in conflict. So we want to respect each other. We want to create a safe environment for everybody, in particular our children, to feel safe to tell us what's going on, and confidentiality, obviously. So I don't mean in terms of like a therapist or a doctor. I mean in that we're not going to go spread that, oh, my child had a tantrum last night. Because what usually happens is we need to vent, which is fine. I mean, that's something different. But there's sometimes where we get so angry that we kind of spread the word. But our children know about that. And we don't want our children doing that either. So we kind of want to keep the conflict resolution in a really kind of stricter way, where we can ask for help and support, absolutely, but we want to do it in a respectful manner, not kind of like in a tattling way. Then identifying common conflicts. So what are some common conflicts that the family seems to have? Or maybe you and your child, if it's just you and one child. What are some things? Maybe make a list together. Maybe make a list and decide what works for the family. Why is this a conflict? Is it around chores, tasks around the house, screen time, homework, bedtime? And what's happening with those conflicts? And that's always the key for everyone. Why is that a conflict? What is it triggering for the parent? What is it triggering for the child? And how do we reduce the stress? Typically, those most stressful situations cause conflict. So we want to understand what those are, and we take them one by one and develop a plan around them. So how do we cope with the stressful situation of homework? Do we ask the teacher for less homework? Do we ask the teacher be the one who handles the homework? Homework always causes issues in families. And how do we go about that? What is the plan? So you want to develop an awareness that encourages each family member to recognize what are the emotions behind the conflict, because most conflicts, once we understand the emotions behind them, they're not conflicts anymore. Once the child feels that the parent or the guardian respected their emotion, and once the adult feels that the child respected that emotion, the conflict usually resolves on its own. It's usually when we don't talk about how the other person's feeling that conflicts escalate. The self-awareness again, so understanding each other's feelings about it. Mom, dad, aunt, uncle feel really pressured to get the homework done, because if you go to school without the homework done, what's going to happen? How is that going to make me look as a parent? What's going to happen to you? What happens for the child when homework comes up? I feel stupid in front of mom and dad. I can't do this. Grandma's trying to help me and she doesn't know what she's doing and I'm frustrated. Whatever the emotions are, whatever those triggers are, we need to be aware of one another in order to help the conflict. Coping techniques. How do we do it? Do we take a break? Do we do it piece by piece? Do we ask somebody else to do the math because it's frustrating? Whatever the case may be. Do we need to maybe do some of the mindfulness, some of the meditation before we do it, in between? Again, what are those strategies? Children are really, really brilliant and they can come up with their own techniques. you do this with your own techniques, you come up with yours, the child comes up with theirs, and you share. And if you could do any of those together, it causes a wonderful way of connecting and then less conflict across the board. Creating calm space if possible. Again, that calm space looks different for everybody. So whatever your calm space looks like for you would be wonderful. So you can go in times of high conflict and take that pause and go to your calm place. Your child or whoever else you're in conflict with has their calm place, and everyone can calm down and then come back together and resolve the conflict together. You could put anything in there that makes you comfortable in your child's. A lot of times people just pick their bedrooms if that's possible. The meditation process, mediation process, neutral mediators. So again, sometimes conflicts just become too much. They're too frequent, they're too intense, that you need to have a third party in there. Third party should really be someone who's not in the home, someone that both people trust, but should not be in the home, because usually there's usually a conflict of interest there. So I know this group would be a perfect place for that. So you can get some advice from that person. So kind of see from an outsider looking in, someone who's not so emotionally attached definitely helps reduce the conflict there. Structured approaches also helps. So expressing feelings. How does your family express feelings? What's appropriate? What feels comfortable? That's something to really think about for you and your children. Actively listening. How do we actively listen? Do we actually do that? What does that even look like? These skills are really important so we can prevent conflicts from happening, or when there is conflict, they can be healthy conflicts, we call those, right? So there's conflicts that everyone's listening, maybe we disagree, but we're working together for a resolution. So that brainstorming is another part of that helps. So we're all sitting together. Okay, so I don't really like doing homework at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I want to go play my video games. I want to go play with my friends. What can be the resolution? So we understand together and we work through what works for both sides. Agreeing on a plan. If we don't get the children, I know some children are younger or they might not have the capability, but again, having some say in that would help them abide by the conflict and the resolution plan. De-escalation techniques, everyone should understand what those look like in the family and which ones the family would like to use. And again, which individual ones would like to use. Your child might want to use deep breathing. You may say, no, what, I want to do grounding exercises. So if you and your child are in conflict, you could say, okay, it's time for techniques. Let's do de-escalation techniques. And you could go off and do your grounding techniques or stand in front of your child and do it. And your child can do some deep breathing, or you can do each other's together. Again, connecting and understanding and respecting how each other de-escalates. Our children might not de-escalate at all the way that we do. So some of these might work for them and some of them might not. So positive self-talk for your children is really important. Taking breaks. Sometimes when we're in high conflict, we need to take that pause and then come back and talk, but then the conflict rises again. But then to understand that it's okay to take another break. Just to keep talking and screaming and yelling at each other is never going to get anything resolved. So we have to sometimes take more breaks than others. Review and reflect. That's that repair part. It's really important that after a conflict that we talk about what happened. It gets really scary for the adults and the children, especially when there's a lot of screaming and yelling going on. There's a lot of rage and anger and fear in that. And it's really good to talk about what happened. What was that like for both parties? What happened? What happened in your body when that happened? What were the emotions that you were feeling? I was feeling really angry and rageful at your behavior. What were you feeling? Were you scared of the way mommy was talking to you? What was happening? Again, that causes less confusion for children, and they feel that you're connected and you care about them. And then they also understand what you're going through a little bit better. Reflect on that. So how are we doing as a family? How are we doing as a dyad? Are these strategies working for us? If so, great, let's celebrate them. If they're not working, how do we change them so it works for our family? And the family calm plan. This plan is something that a lot of families put into play. And I'm going to go over it quickly because I'm looking at the time. Understands the needs. So again, understand what is the need for the family or the parent and the child, the guardian and the child, identifying those triggers, developing those individual strategies. Again, those will be strategies for you, strategies for your child, and then any joint strategies that you might want for a calming place for the family. Establish the routine. So again, all of these techniques don't just happen when we're escalated, when we're in conflict with our children. The children, as well as you, have to practice them all the time as much as possible, because then it becomes embedded in your nervous system, and your nervous system just is on an autopilot to help de-escalate and calm down. Practice communication skills. Use I statements that will help in conflict. Teach your children to use that. Because when we use the you pronoun, that really makes people feel defensive. I think more so adults, and that's never a good thing because it escalates the conflict. Those visual reminders, those ideas around the house, maybe have visual reminders, pictures for children, the plan written out on the refrigerator or on the cabinet door or in their bedroom or the bathroom or wherever. So everyone is understanding that. I also love when guardians, I always tell them to use Post-its or something, children can make these up positive affirmations about themselves, about the family. Guardians can do this as well, because when you look around your house and you're frustrated and you're in conflict, if you see something that your child wrote about you, that mommy is the best, or grandma is wonderful, or the child sees something that you wrote about them, it does help them calm down in conflict. And it reminds them how wonderful they are. Role playing is really important. So we role play these behaviors with ourselves and for our children. So again, when we're in conflict, it's easier to manage them. And review and adjust, which also means if something's not working, we need to find something better that works. Nothing works all the time and nothing works consistently. So you want to have a few things in your plan. And lead by example. The more we role model these behaviors, this meditation, these grounding exercises, the breathing, the more our children will do them as well. So here are just a few examples of you can do some bonding with your children. Some of these are not easy for some parents to do. We don't have access to some of this, but some of that we can have access to. So again, some family yoga, I'll read a few reading together, art time together, breathing exercises, journaling, anything along those lines we can do together. Again, I love when families come up with these on their own. You have a little bit of everyone's input and everyone feels empowered to continue with them. So we are Family Kind. If you need anything, you can ask us for any help that you need. We're here at all times. And I hope I did that okay, because I know, Christy, we want to have questions and everything. I tried to.
No, you're doing perfectly fine,
Sorry.
perfectly fine. The information is definitely important and on time. What I would like to do now is check in with our interpreters before we go into the chat and see if we have any questions in their rooms.
There is no question from the Bangla line.
Thank you.
There's no questions from Chinese line.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from our parents who are in the chat currently for Robin? You may raise your.
Yeah, I have Nikki asking, what is active listening? That's a great question. Can I start with that? Just answer that? Okay. So active listening, it's really what it is actually being in tune with your child. So I'll give you some examples. So I call them the Mr. Piss skills, so excuse the language, but so it's using minimal courage. So if you and I are talking together in a conversation, I'm talking with my child and I are talking, I'll go, oh yeah, tell me more, go on, and I'll shake my head, things like that. So you let the child know or the person know that you're actually listening, but you don't want to interrupt too much. Then also paraphrasing. I'm kind of something that I'm saying, maybe shorten it a little bit and send it back to me so I know that you're listening. Silence is a really good tool for active listening and shows that you're attentive to what someone's saying. And then when they're done talking or there's a pause in the break, you can react with a restatement of what the child said. So the child says, I'm really angry at my teacher. You could say, oh, you're really angry with your teacher. Interpretation is a part of active listening as well. So it's a really important skill. So if the child comes home and says, I'm never going to school together, I hate my teacher, I hate my friends, you can say, you sound like you really had a hard day. So tell me what's going on. So that's the active listening piece in there. So there's a bunch of different skills that go in there, but all the skills teach the child that you're listening to me, that you care about what I'm saying. And, I can also correct you if you're a little bit wrong, but you're understanding what I'm saying. Nikki, I hope that helped.
Thank you. Also, guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so that it gives you a